So, I've noticed that my videos tend to do the best when they're inherently negative. Crapping all over Avengers Campus? Check. Highlighting how Disney Genie would change your experience for the worse? Check. But this isn't why I started the channel. I certainly don't mind being critical when I think it's necessary and constructive, but I just don't like to bandwagon off of the negativity that often pervades online communities. That's why instead of focusing on this firestorm that is the Galactic Starcruiser, and the many other videos that have been made about it, I decided that I wanted to go in a more positive direction with my Dinosaur vs. Indiana Jones Adventure video, showcasing what those rides do well. I didn't ever intend to comment on the marketing of the Galactic Starcruiser and wanted to wait until actual media is allowed in to document the experience and make my judgment from there. My plan is to wait until March and see how the hotel actually pans out, rolling that into a larger video on whether these sort of immersive hotel experiences could really be a future avenue of themed entertainment. But you know what? This is some of the absolute worst marketing I've ever seen, completely disconnected from the target audience that Disney was shooting for. It's had such an adverse effect that people are canceling their reservations, and that's a lot of money that Disney is losing if you haven't seen the prices. But recently, it hasn't been just this. The various marketing teams that make up the company seem completely incapable of connecting with the people they're trying to reach. This ranges from absolutely insulting corporate nonsense speak in their promotions, talking down to their audience as if they're all morons. On the other end, higher-ups within the company are making comments and statements that transparently reveal how much they detest their own consumers, and it's continued to become more frequent. I have absolutely no idea what is happening with Disney's marketing right now, and the Galactic Starcruiser is just a prime example of a strange and sudden downturn for this aspect of the company, no doubt indicative of the severity of other issues I've continued to highlight through my videos. So, yeah. This isn't the video I wanted to make, but this is interesting enough that I couldn't just not talk about it. Before I touch on the Galactic Starcruiser, because I know that's why people are here, I would first like to highlight something that I hate about this company. That particular thing would be this highly sanitized, but also downright condescending corporate speak that has come to define many of the public statements from this company. For example, Disney recently announced that Mickey's Toontown at Disneyland would be closing for some minor refurbishments, reopening with new play areas for little kids. And you know what? That would be fine if it wasn't for how much they talked down to the audience with the public statement about this. The post on the Disney Parks blog is what you would expect, full of fluff and nonsensical keywords that often defines Disney's public relations. For example, take this sentence. The beloved Mickey's Toontown will transform into a vibrant symphony of sights, sounds, and sensations. This appears to be false, as the only thing they actually announced here was the addition of an interactive water fountain and what looks to be a tree with some roots that children can climb through. Again, it would be fine if they didn't try to market it like this. A nearby dreaming tree will be inspired by the tree a young Walt Disney would daydream under in his hometown. Are you kidding me? It's just a tree! Is every tree in the Disney parks inspired by Walt Disney? This corporate nonsense and need to connect everything back to Walt Disney himself, in the most superficial way possible, is insulting to his memory. It's like a weird and desperate attempt to get a stamp of approval from a man who probably would have hated what his company had become today. However, I would like to borrow one more quote from this blog post. We are so excited to leverage Disney's powerful brand, develop new stories, and share even more magical experiences with our guests, said D'Amaro. If you don't know who Josh D'Amaro is, he's the current chairman of Disney Parks, Experiences, and Products, the position formerly held by Bob Chapek. But really, this shallow play area and lawn space works to leverage Disney's powerful brand? Guests are going to be developing new stories and sharing magical experiences at this water fountain? This statement is so ridiculously sanitized and full of nonsense keywords that it comes off as insulting. Speaking of insulting, here's another quote from Josh directly from Disney's D23 website concerning the implementation of Disney Genie and Lightning Lane. It's super easy and convenient, and above and beyond that, there are some attractions that use the Lightning Lane queue, which you can purchase individually, which is the ultimate in flexibility. Think about Rise of the Resistance as an example. It's a highly demanded attraction. Guests show up in the morning and they try to get into the virtual queue. We get as many people on there as we can, but inevitably, someone is disappointed. Now, there's another option on top of the virtual queue, so if Rise of the Resistance is the reason you're at Disneyland or Disney's Hollywood Studios, there may be an option for you to purchase Rise of the Resistance. So again, flexibility, optionality, better guest experience overall. Really. This company designed an attraction that was so unreliable and had such poor capacity that you're now presenting Lightning Lane as a pro-consumer policy? You're essentially saying that guests can now pay to bypass Disney's mistakes? That particular post is full of other nonsense as well, describing how Disney Genie would help guests do what they want, when we clearly knew from the start that this would never actually be the case, and so far that's been proven correct. However, despite the many detestable statements that Josh has supposedly made, he's still generally well liked by the Disney community. Why is that the case? Well, first, through 2018 and 2019, he was president of Disneyland Resort, where he made great strides in repairing the strained relationship between Disney and the city of Anaheim, which had become contentious over the last decade. After only having spent a year and a half there, though, he was promoted to president of Walt Disney World. I know a fair number of people who work for Disney, and from what I've heard, he immediately started renovating and expanding cast member break spaces, and a resort where the cast members just haven't been treated very well over the last decade. I've also seen Josh a lot myself, as he always seems to be in the parks talking with guests and taking their feedback. I've never spoken to him, but who he seems to be as a person is quite different from the highly manicured statements that are attributed to him. Now taking on Chapek's previous role, as he was promoted to CEO, Josh is clearly being prepped for a higher role in the company, potentially that CEO position. And so in his defense, many of these statements could just be him playing along with Chapek's policies. However, there is also the possibility that he never made these statements at all. The new redesign for Epcot is being led by Imagineer Zach Ridley, who appears to be a very safe PR choice as a discount version of Joe Rohde. If you follow Zach on Instagram, his posts provide an exciting and insightful look into the world of paint? Ah yes, how could we forget the storytelling capabilities of concrete? Well, just reading through his posts, you can see that they seem to be well manicured and full of those same meaningless buzzwords that Disney likes to use. But surprisingly, one post actually had editor's notes accidentally still included in it, being promptly removed shortly thereafter. I don't actually know offhand which post this was, but as you can see, no one could seemingly post or say anything without Disney's corporate filter. From this, the question arises, does Zach even create these posts himself? And from there, the question evolves, did Josh actually say these things that are attributed to him? The bizarre and dystopian corporate speak of the Disney company is a problem. In this new Chapek era, where the quality of everything is going down, whether that be in-park maintenance or new additions, the glaring superficiality of Disney's marketing comes off as blatantly insulting, treating Disney consumers as morons. On the flip side of this though, Disney has recently made a fair number of surprising and unfiltered statements. For example, in a November earnings call, Disney CFO Christine McCarthy made some statements on how Disney would address rising inflation due to supply chain interruption. One possible avenue is reducing portion sizes at in-park restaurants, or as McCarthy stated it, we can cut portion size, which is probably good for some people's waistlines. Whoa, that's a very bold and unfiltered statement coming from a corporate figurehead in a company that seems obsessed with the most sanitized public image possible. It goes beyond just this passive-aggressive insult though, revealing this cavalier attitude of how they're going to keep cutting things and charging more, putting the burden on the consumer and revealing that they just simply don't care. Even with a large degree of public outcry from this statement, Disney chose to ignore it, offering no explanation or apology. This, though, is indicative of a larger pattern. If you recall, back in June, Disney released Black Widow, not just to theaters, but on Disney Plus as well, for a $30 upcharge. In July, Scarlett Johansson then filed a lawsuit against Disney, claiming that she was guaranteed a theatrical-only release, and that a large sum of her salary was tied to the box office performance. Obviously, by releasing it for an upcharge on their streaming service, Disney undercut what they would pay her in what is a pretty scummy move. However, the response from the company was outright shocking. From CNBC, "There is no merit whatsoever to this filing," Disney said in a statement Thursday. "The lawsuit is especially sad and distressing in its callous disregard for the horrific and prolonged global effects of the thing that the YouTube algorithm will flag videos for if spoken." Being entangled in a lawsuit, it's such a strangely unprofessional and aggressive statement, not to mention a transparently hypocritical one. If you don't have the context, movie theaters haven't been doing very well over the last 2 years. However, in order to return to normalcy and acclimate people back to the experience, studios have been releasing their films with the expectation that they will experience either financial loss or reduced revenue from what they could have potentially made just a year before. To alleviate these losses, studios have been offering digital releases, whether that be to just encourage growth with their subscription services, or in the case with Disney Plus, as an added upcharge. Understandable. But where Disney really messed up was taking this opportunity to pay Johansson less than what she would have made with a normal release. The statement itself was also outrageously hypocritical, considering that Disney did everything they could to reopen their parks back when things were at their worst. If they were really concerned with people's health and safety, then they would have taken their mask and social distancing policies more seriously. Chapek also took this opportunity to test what people would and would not tolerate in regard to park cuts. We're now experiencing a severe cut in entertainment options and adequate staffing for the parks. An unnecessary reservation system is still in place, acting as an anti-consumer measure to prioritize day tickets over pass holders. With the removal of the FastPass system to help control crowds on reopening, it was the perfect excuse to implement a new paid skip the line option that really just makes you pay to wait in a crowd. Chapek always wanted to nickel and dime parkgoers, and the shutdown was the perfect excuse to implement these and other policies all at once, under the guise of public safety. So yeah, that's a pretty rich statement considering how well Disney took advantage of the situation at the expense of their parkgoers. But it keeps going. Regardless of what you think about WDW news today, and I don't want to get into it because that's a whole can of worms, Disney seems to be getting into drama with them, and it's just unnecessary and unprofessional. Bob Chapek himself is also wildly unpopular, both with fans and reportedly, there have been a lot of concerns from inside the company as well. Because of this, another concerning move was made, in which Disney hired Jeff Morrell as its chief corporate officer, handling public relations. Morrell previously served as executive vice president at British Petroleum, working to help change public perception about the infamous BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico in 2010. This move in itself should be concerning because it's less about connecting with consumers and more about controlling negative press. Bob Chapek's contract is up in 2023, and he appears to be trying to do everything he can to salvage his reputation, despite being the cause of his own issues. Essentially, despite the lower level PR and the issues of it being overly sanitized, the PR on the executive side of things seems to be getting messy and almost a little bit personal. It's going to be interesting to see how this all pans out, especially when the Galactic Starcruiser finally makes its debut with Chapek's name tied so heavily to it. So yeah, let's get into that. So let me first be very clear. I'm going to wait until the Galactic Starcruiser actually opens and we can get a glimpse into the full experience before actually making a judgment on whether this is a success or not. However, as I'm sure you've seen, Disney recently released a promotional video for this experience, and a week later, suddenly deleted it. That's a pretty significant move because this is the video that was intended to be used by different media outlets, embedded in their websites and articles. The strongest theory on why the video was removed was because it led to significant cancellations. If you haven't been following the news on this, the Galactic Starcruiser is extremely pricey, but when Disney released their first 3 months of booking, all of the dates were immediately snatched up. Even though I don't think this pricing model is sustainable beyond a year at most, it didn't surprise me to see people booking it up so quickly. However, with the release of this video, a number of dates started quickly opening up, revealing that a large number of people were beginning to cancel. Hey Bob Chapek, explain that one to the shareholders. However, because Disney has revealed so little about what this experience actually entails, we only have these snippets of media to go off of, and they haven't been very encouraging. Let's first discuss this clip released back in November about the activities on board. Something that Disney has been hyping up on the ship is lightsaber training, where you would be able to take a lightsaber and learn to deflect blaster fire from some sort of training drone or program. As you can see here with Josh D'Amaro demonstrating, Disney seems to suffer from overpromising and underdelivering. Not that this game isn't potentially fun, but certainly not what you would expect from a $5,000 experience, right? The video then moves on to the bridge of the ship, where it's revealed that you and other guests can step up to a console and engage in button smashing to fight off an attack from the First Order. What these small reveals tell me is that Disney demolished Disney Quest for nothing. A Star Wars refurbishment to a single floor there with games like these would have been a perfect way to refresh the experience in that building. Instead, these shallow, gimmicky activities will come to define part of your $5,000 experience. Perhaps it's better in person, but the marketing, as that is the focus of the video, is really failing here. Moving on to the deleted video itself, we're introduced to Anne Morrow Johnson, an executive producer at Walt Disney Imagineering and creative director on this project. We also meet Sean Giambroni, an actor for ABC Television, which is the first red flag here. This whole video feels like a promotion produced by ABC's morning talk show, Good Morning America. I've only seen a few clips from that show here and there, but it strikes me as quite odd. Early morning shows have a tendency to present information in a way that feels quite clean and sanitized, yet suffers from that same issue of talking down to their audience, as if they're all sheltered, ignorant suburbanites. I have no idea who the key demographic is here, but I just find the shallow nature of content like this incredibly off-putting. This tone dominates the Galactic Starcruiser video, with Sean's over-the-top acting helping to make it uncomfortable to watch. I've also noticed from the beginning that there's children featured here. Not that I wouldn't expect that people would bring their children into this experience, or that children themselves wouldn't think it's cool, but the premise and price of the Starcruiser implies a more adult experience, does it not? This promotion is very much aiming for the ABC sanitized family audience, and I believe that it reveals larger issues with the experience. By trying to be all-encompassing, appealing to various demographics, the Galactic Starcruiser ends up appealing to none. Star Wars fans want this immersive experience that brings you right into that world, but judging from the family marketing, the shallow games, and even the aesthetic of the ship, it's definitely not for them. Speaking of the aesthetic, I will reserve full judgment for when everything is finally revealed, but as many have already pointed out, what we have been shown doesn't feel very Star Wars. I realistically never expected this experience to feel like it was on the grittier side of the universe that we often see in the films, but the design of the ship also feels completely out of place. It feels very much like a knockoff brand or just generic sci-fi. At one point, Sean wanders off into a bar and we encounter this experience with a Twilight pop star, but also take note that everything here also feels too artificial and fake. People aren't going to be turning around and bobbing their heads to this uncomfortable song that feels completely out of place in the Star Wars universe. I think this serves to reveal a larger issue, in that it appears that the Starcruiser was designed by people who don't really seem to understand anything about the aesthetic of Star Wars. This is further reinforced by a video that was leaked by people who had booked. This little tidbit of media welcomes guests to the Starcruiser, giving them a vague idea of what they might be able to experience. However, let me reiterate that this is at minimum a $5,000 experience. If you are paying that kind of money, will this cheaply produced video that feels nothing like Star Wars convince you that you are about to get a good experience? Take notice of the costume, makeup, and background. Actually, not only is the background just generic sci-fi, but it doesn't even seem well produced. Let me ask once again, who is this for? The Galactic Starcruiser might turn out to be an incredible experience that will change the course of themed entertainment, but if Disney's marketing for this continues to be so out of touch, not even knowing which consumer to aim for and having a direct and negative impact on the success of this experience before it even debuts, then Disney really needs to reevaluate how they connect with people. The public reception to the Galactic Starcruiser has been a mess. As I feel I've illustrated though, it seems to be indicative of a larger issue within the company, incapable of effective marketing and PR. Again, I absolutely hate this impersonal and downright insulting corporate speak that defines the marketing of this company. Nothing about an interactive water fountain for infants is going to leverage Disney's powerful brand, or whatever nonsense that this company wants to come up with. It reminds me a bit of my Fall of Disney Parks video, where I made fun of their website's description for Disney's Riviera Resort, touting it as some sort of elegant theming masterpiece, shored up by nauseating and meaningless buzzwords like imagination, and throwing in some vaguely inspired Walt Disney thing that's irrelevant to the experience. This company is just so ridiculously out of touch that I can't even begin to understand why someone would ever write like this. In addition though, I've also discussed how despite this annotation of the marketing, apparently upper executives just can't help themselves. It makes me wonder what statement JPEG will make if the Galactic Starcruiser becomes a financial disaster, which I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. Let me reiterate one last time though, I do really wish that this experience would turn out well. If it's successful, we could see some really interesting changes come to the industry of themed entertainment, which is something I would like to talk about once this experience actually opens. However, if it fails, the industry will take the wrong lesson from this, thinking that immersive and activity-driven hotel experiences are inevitable financial disasters. So again, I think we should wait until this opens to reserve judgment. What we do know about it is that Disney has failed to market it correctly, but I would still like to remain cautiously optimistic. With all of this being said though, I would like to wrap up the video here and just ask that if you enjoy this type of content, just leave a like on the video. It really helps me out, and if you haven't subscribed already, I also recommend hitting that button with bell notification so as to be alerted when new videos are released.